Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jan Geis, Secretary General of EUFORES, and I'm very happy to welcome all of you. I think we have about 2,000 people registered to our live streaming of the event, the EU Green Deal and the ways out of the COVID-19 crisis, a high-level debate about the greening of the COVID-19 recovery. So I'm very happy to welcome everybody to these 90-minute high-level debates. And let me briefly run you through the agenda and who we are. EUFORES is the network of members of parliament in the European Parliament and the EU 27 national parliaments. We have the big honor today to have Energy Commissioner Kadri Simpson with us. We also have Francesco La Camera, the Director General of IRENA with us, presenting new insights about the crisis. And we have 7 members of parliament, 5 members of European Parliament and 2 national members of parliament with us to debate from cross-party perspectives about where things could go and should go, and also the different national levels to see what are the different starting points, what are the different perspectives and perceptions from the different member states. So, but before we go into this, I would also like to let you know we have first 2 keynotes to present to us, some insights, and after that we have 4 rounds of parliamentary debate, which will be moderated by Kieran Cuff, a member of European Parliament and President of EUFORES. And around 5 o'clock, we also involve you as participants through the Slido system. So you will see underneath the streaming video, we see the Slido question and answer. So please feel free starting to ask questions from now on if you like, but probably even more so after the first 45 minutes, because the top 3 questions will be addressed to the members of parliament, the panel, and Mr. Francesco La Camera from IRENA. And we're very happy to focus in the first 45 minutes to the work of Energy Commissioner Kadri Simpson, because, Mr. Simpson, you have to leave at 16:45 to go to a minister's meeting, as much as I know. So the first round will be asking questions to you. But before we go into the technical details, I would like to invite now, again, Kieran Cuff, member of European Parliament for the Greens, European Free Alliance, and also the president of EUFORES, of this cross-party parliamentary network, to dress the scene a little bit for us, to give some political insights where the discussion is at the moment from inside the European Parliament and where you believe things could go, and then we go into the keynote speeches. So now I hand over to Kieran and welcome everyone.
Thanks very much, Jan, and I'm delighted to speak in my capacity as president of EUFORES. EUFORES is unique in that it's a cross-party organisation which provides an excellent platform in the European Parliament, and it allows us to be part of a network that enables close collaboration between both national and European parliamentarians in the field of renewable energy and energy efficiency. I'm really looking forward to the topic of today's discussion, the European Green Deal and the ways out of the COVID-19 crisis, a high-level debate about the greening of the European Union recovery. I want to begin by saying that COVID-19 came out of the blue, but climate change did not. And the soaring temperatures in Siberia this week shouldn't come as a surprise to any of you listening. And the COVID crisis is also a global crisis, which goes right to the heart of our society and economy. And although the COVID crisis will subside one day, we still have to ensure that the future of our planet. And crises like this often create the change needed to find new pathways and help to overcome resistance. And the pandemic recovery presents a real opportunity for Europe's policymakers to design more sustainable economies that addresses climate challenges, a just transition, and protects the health of citizens. So COVID-19 has already had a major impact on our economy, but injecting investment in energy efficiency can help to bring the European economy back on track, as well as contributing to the fight against climate change. And that leaves us with a unique opportunity to tackle both of these issues together. And accelerating renewable energy investment in the recovery phase of the pandemic can deliver global GDP gains of 98 trillion by 2050, according to IRENA. So investments in energy efficiency, they stimulate the economy, especially construction, the renewable energy industries, which contribute about 9% of Europe's GDP and directly account for 18 million direct jobs. Think how important those jobs will be in the months and years to come. So we have an unprecedented moment before us. We're faced by not one, but two emergencies, the climate emergency and the COVID emergency. Either on their own would be a daunting challenge, but the two together leaves us with no choice other than to come together and find solutions. Although we might not be able to solve all the problems here today, we can at least demonstrate that despite our political differences, we are able to come together and tackle these crises as one. Jan, over to you.
So thanks, Kieran. And we go straight now to Energy Commissioner Kadri Simpson. So, Commissioner, it's a huge honor to have you with us tonight, this afternoon, and to learn from you what is the latest state of the debate in Brussels. What is the background discussion on the COVID-19 recovery? What is the discussion about the Green Deal? And the biggest question, how to unite these two things so that we can come out better off of both crises and learn about it. So, Commissioner, please, the floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you, Kieran, for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, honourable members of the European Parliament and honourable members of the national parliaments. When I met in December 2019 with the EUFORES network in Strasbourg, I presented to you the European Green Deal as it was already the Commission's main roadmap for switching towards a carbon neutral economy. And the efforts we had in front of us to decarbonize our energy system were enormous. So 7 months later today, Europe has been fighting the biggest health crisis in living memory. And the pandemic has also sent shockwaves across the energy markets. Last week, we saw new data from the IEA Global Energy Investment. And this data showed us that the global energy investment would fall by 20% in 2020. And to compare it with the previous crisis, it is almost double of what we saw in the 2008 financial crisis. But we are not letting the crisis to stop us reach our goal. To the contrary, the Green Deal is still at the center of the Commission's priorities, and we have adopted a recovery plan for Europe. This is the Next Generation EU, putting the green transformation at its heart. So the Green Deal and the clean energy transition being our new growth strategy to create new investments and jobs for Europe. So I know that you had a good debate in plenary on 27th of May on the package, and I have noted very strong support of the European Parliament for it. With the recovery package, we have a horizontal line aiming at greening the economy and investments at all levels. So we also have 25% earmarking for delivering the climate goals of the Green Deal. All the investments under Next Generation EU will have to respect the green oath to do no harm. And the economic recovery package will stimulate economic recovery across the EU with two principal components. First, the Next Generation EU of 750 billion euros. Second, the revamped proposal for the long-term EU budget of 1.1 trillion euros. And the biggest program under the Next Generation EU is the Recovery and Resilience Facility. Altogether, it's 560 billion euros. And this Recovery and Resilience Facility will support the investments and reforms that are essential for sustainable recovery. And under this new facility, member states will design national recovery plans based on a dual green and digital transition, and they will be assessed accordingly. Within InvestEU, the sustainable infrastructure window will also be doubled, providing a guarantee of roughly 20 billion euros. So previous proposition was 11.5 billion euros. And this guarantee is for sustainable infrastructure projects that includes the renovation wave to support local jobs and also support the innovation in clean energy technologies for those sectors which have declined, such as renewable energy and storage, clean hydrogen batteries, CCS, and sustainable infrastructure. So energy will have an important role to play in the recovery. The proposed instruments will help unlock investments in energy efficiency and building renovation, also renewable energy and its supply chain, also innovative technologies like clean hydrogen, and cleaner transport and the protection of our environment. In this context, I want to accompany the recovery package with ambitious initiatives that will mobilize private and public actors for the clean energy transition. One of those initiatives is Renovation Wave Initiative. This will be adopted in September, and I will aim for a faster and deeper renovation of buildings, moving the EU towards climate neutral buildings. And such renovation work is labor intensive and would engage local companies across all member states, mostly SMEs. It can have immediate impact by boosting the necessary demand and supporting the local supply chain. The renovation wave will address the main barriers to renovation and to reinforce to pull factors to gradually trigger at least a doubling of current renovation rates. We are also working to ensure that the Renovation Wave Initiative addresses the existing legislative framework, as well as at a broad range of non-legislative tools, including financing. Already on the 8th of July, I will present our strategy for energy system integration, and this will be accompanied by hydrogen strategy. So energy system integration is how we connect the different parts of the energy system and make sure the future energy system will become much more flexible, dynamic and integrated, and different energy carriers, electricity, heat, cold, gas, solid and liquid fuels will have to be innovatively linked and converted to provide affordable and clean energy. Through our energy system integration strategy, we want to take advantage of the synergies between sectors and use our resources as smartly and efficiently as possible. This means a more circular energy system where waste is reused for our energy purposes. It also means electrification, and finally it means a system mostly based on renewable and decarbonized fuel, including hydrogen. So clean hydrogen has strong potential to decarbonize sectors where electrification is difficult or even not possible, like the chemical sector, the steel industry, or heavy-duty transport. For this to happen, we need a framework to scale up the demand and production of clean hydrogen. Also, to create markets where this demand and supply meet, and support appropriate infrastructure to get the hydrogen where it is needed. So to reach a carbon neutral economy, we will need to increase drastically our production and usage of renewable electricity. In fact, we estimate that when it comes to offshore wind, we need to increase our supply 20-fold. So we are working to present our offshore renewable energy strategy after the summer to guide us in boosting renewable levels in the energy mix. And I believe these are pretty good elements to think through. And I am sure Francesco La Camera, Secretary General of the International Renewable Agency, IRENA, will give you all the information you need on the role of renewables in our future mix. Thank you. And I'm waiting for your comments and questions if you do have some. Thank you.
So thanks a lot, dear Commissioner Simpson. And indeed, it's a huge honor to continue that debate with members of Parliament and you, because there's a lot to learn, lots to exchange and coordinate. And now I would like to hand over to Francesco La Camera, Director General of IRENA, as you said, International Renewable Energy Agency. And Francesco, you are famous, you and your agency, to come up with amazing studies on renewables all over the world. And I don't know if I say too much, that you will come out with a study exactly about the COVID-19 crisis and how to make the recovery green. But Francesco, it's now up to you to tell us in the next 5 minutes about what your plans are, and later in the debate we will also focus more on details. But now probably you give us the first glimpse how to green the recovery. Francesco, up to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to be with you here today. I want also to thank Commissioner Simpson for her leadership on the energy transition. Europe's Green Deal sent an important message to the world at this critical time. We are very pleased to welcome you, Commissioner, at the IRENA Assembly in last January, to share your message with our global membership. As you mentioned, renewables have an important role to play in this recovery. The fact that IRENA has over 160 members and some 20 states in accession show that this is a shared vision among countries in the world. For the past decade, prior to the pandemic, renewables dominate power generation. As you know, last year, 2/3 of new capacity was renewables, leaving fossil fuel and nuclear far behind. And the installed capacity of renewables have systematically outpaced the traditional one in 8 years in a row by now. This means that, as we say in our cost report, that next year, 102,000 gigawatts of coal power will be operated more costly if we were to provide that energy with new renewable plants. So that's real that renewables are the most competitive way to produce energy in the large part of our planet. So the market is working for it. But the market alone is not enough. As we look at the action needed following the pandemic, we must address, as you say, Kufe, the twin challenges of COVID recovery and climate change. In April, IRENA launched its Global Renewable Outlook. The outlook presents IRENA long-term energy scenario. It shows that it is possible to stay in line with the 1 decrease, with a rapid and decisive shift to a renewable-based system. Tomorrow, as you say, Jan, IRENA will be publishing its post-COVID recovery report. The report links the short-term measures to create jobs and revive economies with the long-term perspective of the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. I would like to share with you shortly 3 main messages from the report with you today. And naturally, I hope that you can join me tomorrow in this presentation. My first point is that energy transformation requires structural change. We called our new report an agenda for resilience, development, and equality, because it makes the case that a holistic approach is necessary to ensure that the energy transition addresses both economic and societal needs. Not only will this be the most cost-effective and sustainable pathway in the long run, it will also help to increase resilience to future possible shocks. My second point is we need to invest in a new future. To date, governments around the world announced over $8 trillion in stimulus packages. We also see that energy is often not prioritized as it should be. It is important that we recognize the impact of energy within our economy and the transformative potential of recovery measures. The energy transition offers opportunities for investments to stimulate economic growth and jobs. ARENA has been tracking renewable jobs since 2013. Since then, the number of renewable jobs doubled to over 1 million in 2018. And it will go to be 4 times this number in 2050. Drawing to this work, ARENA's new report quantified the potential benefit of renewable investment, including how they translate into jobs and economic growth. And I repeatedly invite you to join us tomorrow, where I will give us our numbers. The report also discussed the policies required to ensure that industries are created that provide a range of jobs in different sectors and segments of value chain. My final point is the importance of investment as innovation that has also very well underlined by Commissioner Simpson. The recovery is an opportunity to make strategic investment in technologies that will play a game-changing role in the long term. Innovative solutions such as green hydrogen offer the potential to deliver a net zero energy system. And by investing now, there are rewards further down the line. Let me conclude by saying that while none of us can predict the future, it is important that we make strategic policy and investment choices take us a step forward and do not bail out the past. ARENA will continue to lead the efforts to transform the global energy system, one that is inclusive, sustainable, and equitable. Thank you very much.
So thanks a lot, Francesco. So we're very curious to see the outcome of your study, and for sure there's lots of concrete stuff to learn, because that's the big question, beyond targets, to be concrete. Now we would go into the first parliamentary perspectives discussion with the members of parliament that we have here. So let me introduce quickly who's on board. Of course, Kieran Cuff, our president. Then Maria da Graça Carvalho, she is a member of European Parliament from EPP and from Portugal. Then we have Katalin Che, she is from Renew Europe, she is from Hungary. Niels Fuglsang, he is a member of European Parliament from S&D, from Denmark, and also Vice President of EUFORES. By the way, Katalin Che is also Vice President of EUFORES. And then Nicolas González Casares, who is also from S&D, European Parliament. And then we have from national parliaments, Cristina Madalina Pruna, she is member of parliament from Romania, and Sara Sofia Siren, member of parliament from Finland. So welcome everybody, and I hand over now to Kieran Cuff, our president, to moderate the discussion. And this first round will be feedback and questions towards the Commissioner, Kadri Simpson. Kieran, up to you.
Thanks very much, Jan. And we have to keep to quite tight timings. We just have just over a minute each for those questions. So I'll ask you to be quite precise in your thoughts. But look, a lot of food for thought from Commissioner Simpson in her words. What echoed with me was that what we need to do must be fast and deep. So there is a sense of urgency in moving quickly. But I'll first go to Maria da Graça for your thoughts or your question, to be precise, to the Commissioner. Maria.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank all the members of the panel, to thank Commissioner to be with us, and the EUFORES for the organization of the very interesting debate. I will focus probably on the energy system integration. I'm very happy that the Commission is putting forward this piece of the integration, because in the past we saw many times that energy savings were not linked to the renewables, and we dealt with buildings, industry, and transport in a separate way. And again, also the the technologies were done in separate ways. So it's very important that we integrate all of that. And my question is, do you think that we will also integrate the part of water? Water is very important in south of Europe, where there is a lack of water, and also in islands. And to produce water, you need energy. So the integration is the way we should look at all the systems from all in an holistic approach. So congratulations, and I look forward to the work of the Commission.
Thank you, Maria da Graça. So I'll move on to Katalin Cech, our Vice President. Katalin, your question to Commissioner Simpson.
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you very much, Commissioner, for being here with us. It was very motivating for me to hear your thoughts and obviously to observe the work you are doing in the Commission. Because right now it really depends on our political decision makers to ensure that the economic crisis, how the economic crisis affects our fight against climate change and our fight for a greener future. And I have to admit, I'm a bit worried hearing all the voices which are calling to only prioritize industrial recovery, even at the expense of climate goals, without climate proofing. And I'm afraid that these voices are just getting louder and louder. So I very much believe that we have to invest into our future through greening our economy, even if it makes extra expenditure, because, well, climate change is our fight of the lifetime. And that's why we need a very ambitious Commission program. And thank you very much for providing that. My question would concern the proceedings in the Council. How do you see the aspects of the German presidency and the next European Council, where lots of these important issues will be decided on? And keep up the good fight, and thank you very much for your work.
Thanks, Katalin, for that. An interesting question about the politics of it all, following on from Maria da Graça's question about integration and the link to water resources. So I'll move on to Niels Fuchsland, our other Vice President. You're very welcome. Your question to the Commissioner.
Thank you, Kieran, and thank you, Commissioner, for your good words. I do indeed congratulate you with your work on the Green Deal and on the recovery package that we need very much. The Green Deal is a major step in the right direction, but we have to be aware that it's not enough. The reduction target of 50 to 55% is not yet in line with the Paris Agreement, so we have to increase our ambition level. And here your work is, of course, very important, Kadri Simpson. I would like to ask you about the package that you announced that I completely support, the 8th of July package on hydrogen strategy and energy system flexibility or integration. I think these are paramount to having more renewable energy, having storage capacity in hydrogen, and having more flexible energy. How will you make sure that, how will you push for more flexibility and more storage capacity in the energy systems? Would you consider having minimum European standards that the member states are obliged to live up to, or how do you see it? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Niels. An interesting question about flexibility and storage. So I'll move on. We have Nicolas Gonzalez Chazeres. Your question, please, for Commissioner Simpson.
Thank you very much. Thank you to EUFORES for the organization. Thank you very much for inviting me to this prestigious event. Thank you, Commissioner, for attending this debate. According to the International Energy Agency, annual global CO2 emissions are expected to fall around 8% in 2020, predominantly due to COVID-19. This figure is similar to the necessary annual GHG reductions towards the 1.5 degrees temperature goal of Paris. This gives us an idea of the challenge that we have ahead of us. Also, recoveries from previous global economic crises have generally been accompanied by a large jump in emissions. We cannot allow this. Now we have the opportunity to rebuild by promoting a future energy system carbon neutral and in line with Paris. The Commission initiatives in this field of renewable energy and energy efficiency are a good opportunity. For example, with the strategy for energy system integration to coordinate all sectors, including those more difficult to decarbonize. Finally, my question is, how can we prevent the necessary investments in clean technology from ending up in gray hydrogen and causing a lock-in situation? This is my question.
And a very interesting one it is too, and I'm sure Commissioner Simpson will be happy to respond. We now move on to our other questions. We have two MEPs with us, Cristina Pruna and Sara Sofia Seren. So Cristina Pruna, Deputy Pruna, your question to the Commissioner.
Yes, thank you very much, Sharon. It is an honor for me to be here with you today in this event. Thank you so much, Commissioner Simpson, for your remarks. I also believe that this EU recovery plan and Next Generation EU, it is very good, and it shows that there's a will at the European level to get through this crisis. And I also see that there's a will to focus energy security, especially on new technologies such as hydrogen, such as green energy. But I also want to give you the Eastern European perspective and the Romanian perspective. And here in Romania, we see energy security as an interrupted flow of energy at an affordable price, of course. And we see the need to have a diverse mix of energy production. And we in Romania rely very much on natural gas to go through the transition and to be able to diminish the carbon emissions and to reach the carbon targets. So that's why we are hoping that the GTF, the Just Transition Fund, and the EU ETS mechanisms will also finance natural gas projects. And I see there's a debate at European level, and personally I'm a bit concerned that this will not be possible. I know there's a debate in the European Parliament right now. So I was wondering, what is the position of the Commission with respect to that, especially that there are some financing institutions such as the EIB that have very limited financing rules that I see the Commission is also sharing. And also another thing that I wanted to
very
say.
Briefly, Cristina.
Yes, very briefly, sorry. It's also a matter of jobs in this energy transition. And I think we should also see that in Germany, for instance, there's a big company, car there, that invested in China to produce batteries. And I was wondering how we can ensure that we keep the green jobs here in Europe. Thank you so much.
Some really interesting questions there. Deputy Pruna, thank you so much for that. And our last questioner, Deputy Sara Sofia Seren, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, and indeed you did. Thank you to the Commissioner, and thank you for colleagues around Europe for these remarks. Indeed, we share the crisis and we share the challenge. We need to create economic growth and decline emissions simultaneously and in a sustainable way. And I agree that the climate target should be increased. At the moment, we are making decisions that affect future generations, and we cannot cause them double harm. create more public debt and an economic crisis, and also leave climate crisis unsolved. All of these would have also financial consequences. So my question is, how do we make sure that we will not spend €1 in unsustainable forms of energy productions when talking about recovery and recovery funding? And how do we make sure that the financing is transparent and based on a democratic decision-making system? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Seren, for that really interesting question, coming on top of the question about gas previous to that. So, Commissioner, I will ask you to respond to some of the really interesting questions we had over the last 10 minutes. So, over to you.
Indeed, I heard several very good questions, and unfortunately, like it is always, well, there is not enough time to give very deep and thorough answers to all of them. But I will start with the questions that came from representatives of our national parliaments, and also Mr. Casares was asking the same question, that how can we cooperate with our national governments so that they will use their future funds for green transition. From our proposal perspective, we have been very clear that green transition is central for the recovery, also because it is our growth strategy. This means that it is absolutely necessary that member states will propose good projects. In light of the requirement for 25% of the EU budget to be earmarked for climate-related projects, I think that it is only logical that the energy sector is in the middle, because exactly this energy sector is responsible for 3/4 of the EU greenhouse gas emissions. And so additional investments are needed. But precise targeting of these measures will in practice be up to member states. There are different allocations for different funds. For example, under the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which is the biggest share of the funds, the recovery and resilience plans are needed, and they have to be in line with national energy and climate plans, and also the just transition plans. And these reforms are strongly supported from our side. And some funds, like Just Transition Fund, is now bigger volume. It will be 40 billion. This is, of course, by default, we support only the green transition, so that those regions that are right now dependent on the mining industry or are energy-intensive industry regions can accommodate fairer and just transition. The question about gas investments, according to Commission's proposal, you shouldn't use Just Transition Fund finances for any fossil fuel projects, but of course there are different ways how you can find financing for example, highly efficient heat and power combined facilities, just to phase out coal faster. But Commission's proposal makes it possible for every member state to invest in clean energy and energy efficiency projects. You asked about the sense of, or Kieran, you mentioned that here is a sense of urgency. I do agree, and all the member states, they should propose their plans pretty fast. So I myself, I do hope that some of the missing investments that we witnessed this spring to wind projects or solar projects will find alternative investment way because of our recovery plan. About the proposals that are coming soon, our hydrogen strategy and also energy system integration strategy. These are new proposals, but we have to keep in mind that some of the bottlenecks we can also solve without proposing anything new, but just implementing the existing regulation. So Niels was asking about how we can boost storage across EU member states. And for that, it is also a very useful tool, the new electricity market design. So this will better reward flexibility and thus also storage. And this provides the necessary price signals in specific technologies, not only for green hydrogen, but also for batteries. Alliances do help so that we can bring along not only public financing, but also private financing. Without that, we will not achieve our targets. And along with our sector integration and hydrogen strategy, we will also launch Hydrogen Alliance to bring all the market participants together. And I hope that this also gives a strong signal to all the member states. Katalin was asking about the priorities of the German presidency, and hydrogen will be one of the priorities for the Germans. They had Minister Peter Altmaier had a chance to present their priorities in front of Energy Ministers' Council last week. Also offshore wind, because if we are moving towards electrification, we need more renewable electricity, and this is clear that offshore has a waste potential. When I had a chance to discuss our recovery package with national ministers, I felt a very strong support for our Renovation Wave initiative, because in the situation where we are right now, we have to send strong signal to our consumers that we are doing something that gives them in the future smaller heating or cooling bills, but also creates jobs all across Europe. So this will be a very important part of our recovery package. And Mrs. Carvalho was asking, will we also address the water issue in our strategy? So energy efficiency first principle is still very valid. So we will address all the solutions, how we can use waste or excess heat. Water is a very useful tool how to store this excess heat. We will address also the topic of industry and specifically data centers, because we witness that energy efficiency is not like major concern when all across Europe data centers are built. So we do our best to address all the possible solutions, how we can waste less energy, how we can accommodate more electricity, and how we can also use the renewable molecules, because in some sectors electricity is not the option. And doing so, I truly appreciate strong support from European Parliament side, but as important is support from national parliaments, because once again, I have to repeat, these are national governments who will propose good plans for their recovery plans. And I truly hope that there will be a good renewable electricity and renewable energy investment proposals all across Europe. Thank you very much, and have to apologize my early leaving, because I have another good panel ahead of me.
Not at all, Commissioner Simpson. You have been so generous with your time, and we're very conscious of that. And you heard that there are big discussions at a political level within our parliaments about the role of gas, the role of hydrogen. And, you know, you have 2 weeks left to come up with a plan to integrate all these systems. So it was so good of you to take time to be with us here today. I think we're all looking forward to the plan for the integration of our systems in 2 weeks' time. And we wish you and your team the very best with your work in the weeks and indeed months ahead. So thank you so much, Commissioner Simpson.
Thank you for a good discussion. Bye.
Thank you. And now I will pass back to Jan, who will give us an overview of the Slido technology, which is very busy with questions piling up in there. Jan, over to you again.
Well, basically, it's just to tell all the participants out there that you started already. If you see under the streaming video, to tell you again, you see all the questions that you as participants raised. So please, if you have more questions, hand them in, or vote questions that you like, vote them up. So around 5 o'clock, 5 minutes past 5, we will take the top 3 questions and address them to the panel. And so please feel free to hand in your questions. We want to integrate your perceptions and questions as well. Be brief, be clear and precise, which is even better for the panel. And now I hand back to Kira, because now we go into the round number 2 of the parliamentary perspectives page, and where we can also now ask a little bit more to Francesco what you have as details in your studies, if you're already ready to give up some secrets at the moment. So Kieran, next round, please.
Thanks very much, Jan. So yes, indeed, just to follow on from that with some quick questions to each of the panelists, and I'll do it in reverse order this time. So to Francesco La Camera, what do you think are the measures that all governments should include in their recovery packages? And you heard the discussion and the questions about hydrogen earlier, and indeed you touched on it yourself. So do you want to expand on your views on hydrogen, as well as on other technologies like carbon capture and storage? We're not overly enthusiastic about CCS, but we'd welcome your thoughts on this.
So you mean that I could be enthusiastic?
That's an open-ended question, Francesco.
You know that I think that Commissioner Simpson made a very clear picture about the need for providing into this recovery a better, to build a new market for electricity. You know, the challenge is to go from a centralized fossil fuel dependent system to a system that is decentralized, that gives roles to the consumer, then provide for the flexibility of the system, that provide for the interconnection. So the first thing, in my point of view, are the grids, and put the grids in the condition that they could be really smart and make all the flexibility into the market be there. Other things, infrastructure, because the infrastructure gives the sense where the market is going. So if we want to have more electric vehicles on the market, we have to build a network for having this car, the possibility to get the fuel in, so the electricity. So it's more important that we build the infrastructure. And naturally, this time we can move the fossil subsidies to the green, because with the oil that has a low price is the best moment for doing something like this. Naturally, we have to scale up. Please. So
in conclusion, Francesco, shifting subsidies is an important issue, perhaps.
Yes. And what is funny is that already some African countries trying to take profit of the low price of oil to make this a shift. I think it's time also for developed countries to put their hands in the fossil fuel and trying to switch some of them progressively to the cleaner world. But I don't want to escape your question on CCUS. We don't think that CCS, because of their nature, should be one of the main feature of the stimulus package.
Thank you. I'm pressed for time, so I'll take that as a no to CCS, Francesco. Is that okay?
We estimate that the relevance in terms of CO2 reduction in 2030 could be no more than 1%. We have
Thank you.
a little.
I'll come back to you later on, Francesco, but I have to bring in the other panelists. Thank you for that. Maybe moving on to our national deputies, to Sara Sofia Siren. Sara, how do you think member states can put a part of the recovery plan into national tenders to get a share of the recovery fund? There's a lot of money there at European level. Are you optimistic that you'll be able to access that yourselves in your country?
Well, I am representing a party that is in the opposition now, so I'll try to be diplomatic. Yes, I'm very positive, but we need to shift from talking only about targets to actual plans on how we are going to do the energy transition, how we are actually going to decline the emissions. And we have proposed that we should have more strategy in how we actually maximize the usage of green funding that is available. We have Finland has not in the past been as successful as I think we could be. So we are proposing a more strategic level. I believe that the guidelines are on really focusing on sustainable forms of energy productions and creating a clear plan out of the unsustainable forms of energy production. This can be done in a technology neutral way and should be also in the viewpoint of the actual funding.
Okay, thanks very much for that. And to Christina Pruna, you mentioned the importance of energy security, and you're worried that gas may not be a fuel that's available. Do you think gas is essential, or do you see other perhaps storage options that may come that may be available to you in Romania? What are your thoughts there?
Well, Kieran, I think there are several things that the Romanian government should do, and I do believe that gas is also part of the energy transition, at least in Romania. As you know, we also have a lot of coal here, and the natural transition would be from coal to gas, also to preserve some of the jobs that I was telling you. But of course, it's not the only thing, and I believe we should have a broader look and access new technologies and stimulate the private sector to invest in these new technologies. And I'm talking here about renewables and about storage capacities. And then I also want to refer very briefly to the CCS, because that was a very good question of yours. And I would like to all think if public money that go into this kind of technologies that in the past we've seen that were not economically viable are really a solution from now on. But on the other hand, we still have this CO2 target, so we need to find a solution. And just one last thing, I said it earlier, we need to look at the jobs and how to build our local economies and how to stimulate the creation of new economic activities in this area of green energy at local level. And I think this is also very important, because I've seen things, if we don't stimulate them, will go as business as usual. I mean, companies will still invest in China, and we will be dependent on Chinese technologies to have these targets met, which are very, very important in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think certainty might help us, certainty in policy decisions at a European and indeed a national level. I might move on to Nicolas Gonzalez Chazeres. As an MEP from Spain, we've seen significant investment in wind power onshore in Spain and indeed over in Portugal as well. We hear a lot of talk about ocean energy and about offshore wind. Are you optimistic that that can happen on the Iberian Peninsula and that it will be a significant part of the energy mix in your region in the coming years?
Thank you for this important question for me. I guess so. I hope that the offshore wind will be an opportunity not only for Spain, also from Portugal, and of course for my region, Galicia, that is an ocean region, and it's in the northwest of Spain. I hope that the offshore wind strategy that the Commission will present in the coming months won't be only focused in North Seas. I guess, and I hope that also in the Atlantic Ocean, but in the south. I think that the offshore wind is a big opportunity, not only for producing renewable and green energy, a high amount of green energy, it's also an opportunity to improve our technology, our generation technology, and our industry here in Europe. I think Christina was very clear about the Chinese and the problems with the supply chains that we had in this crisis. I think that we have to develop a good technology, a very advanced technology, take the leadership in this field, and make Europe the leader on this offshore wind technology.
Thank you.
Niels is coming after me, and he knows more than me about offshore wind because he's Danish. But I hope that Spain and all the and Portugal, we have the opportunity of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Niels, do you want to address the same question? Your thoughts on whether offshore will take off, and what do we need to do to make that happen?
Well, I think, Kieran, that certainly I would agree with Nico that this is not only about the North Sea. I mean, we heard the Commissioner Simpson saying that we need, what did he say, we need to many double the amount of offshore wind power that we have.
20-fold, I heard her say.
20-fold, okay. So of course that's not only the Northern Sea, that will be Spain and Portugal and many other places. In Denmark, the government or the parliament just yesterday actually agreed on 2 new islands, energy islands in the Northern Sea and in the Baltic Sea, having 4 gigawatts of wind power. And we will the plan is to transform a lot of that into hydrogen, because it's more energy than we can use in Denmark. It's more electricity than we can use in Denmark. So we will transform it into hydrogen, and we will hope to sell it also and to the rest of Europe. So I think this is the way to go, more offshore wind and power to X, I mean, make it into hydrogen. And then I would agree very much with Francesco, who said that we need to stop the subsidies to fossil fuels. We need to spend most of our funds and resources on renewable energy. I agree with that very much. And the EU could start with that by taking a look at its own budget, I think.
Thanks so much for that. I'm conscious of time, but I do want to get Kathleen Czech and Maria da Graça in as well. Kathleen, from your perspective, the discussion about hydrogen, about gas, where is the debate going from your perspective on this? Where do you think we will be in 2 weeks' time, even on this discussion? And we may have lost Kathleen. I think she was leaving us, wasn't able to stay with us. So maybe to Maria Graça.
She's still there. Kieran, she's still there.
Kathleen is there.
Now she's there.
Sorry, I'm here. I just couldn't find where to unmute my microphone. For that,
no problem. Some quick thoughts on this.
And Gus. Well, I do understand the great divergence of opinions on this. I was a shadow on the Just Transition Fund in the ITRA committee, so I can very well understand the different perspectives. However, I think that if we talk about gas, I think we really have to be mindful on how we spend our European public money in particular, whether we allow investments into technologies that would lock us into something that might be contrary to our green ambitions. So that's why I'm very happy that the taxonomy regulation is coming forward, and I think this should be the framework of everything we do in the Parliament, to have a concrete and coherent and green and sustainable line to follow in every decision we make in the European Parliament. And as for hydrogen, I have 1 second for that. Sorry. Well, very briefly, I think that without sustained growth on the renewables market, there is a limited future for clean hydrogen. However, it would be very important to ensure that Europe can be a market leader in the sustainable hydrogen technology area in order to decarbonize the economy. So therefore, we have to make our renewable energy sector more resilient than before.
Thank you so much. And Maria, I'll give you the last word on this. I might, the same question about hydrogen, but maybe to broaden it out into the issue of storage. You've had a lot of wind coming on stream in your own country, and the issue of storage or demand management comes into play. Will hydrogen be the magic wand for all of this? What do you think?
So very good that you asked me that, because I want to give my opinion on the hydrogen. As probably I have told you, I have worked in many of these technologies as a researcher and a professor, and I always used to tell to my students that the hydrogen is a good solution for niche problems. Is not going to be the solution for everything. You need to analyze first if you have a simpler, more efficient, more economic solution, and sometimes you do, unless you don't have a simpler solution, because in the case of hydrogen is expensive, and even from the thermodynamics point of view, not very, very efficient with the production and utilization of hydrogen. You should use other technologies. But for certain areas like islands is very a good solution. For certain ways of transport that you don't have another way to decarbonize, you should use hydrogen. So hydrogen is not going to be the solution for everything. Is going to be the solution for areas that you don't have a simpler, more efficient and more economic ways to give the solution. And that is very important, that we don't go to hypes and fashions, and that we consider all the technologies, and we first choose the simple one, the most developed one, and the most economic one to the problem, and only after we go to the more complex ones. So hydrogen, very welcome for adequate conditions, and there is several conditions that hydrogen is adequate. Thank you.
Microphone, Kieran.
Now we have, thank you, Maria Graça, for that. Now we have lots of questions coming in on the Slido boards. So Jan, over to you to give us a feel for what they are.
Yes, thanks, Kieran. There are dozens of questions coming in, and we're very happy that you participants upvoted some of them. And the top winner question comes from Oras Tynkinen. about the question, what tools does the EU Commission have to intervene if member states come up with recovery plans that are not sustainable and in line with EU priorities? So that's question number one that should be addressed to the panel. Question number two is, how do you envisage to find the optimum between energy investment costs and sustainability benefits? How will you manage to find the most efficient solutions? Very good question as well. And from Paul McCormack, how can we empower the construction sector to embrace digital transformation and secure the skills to deliver energy efficient buildings? So let's play that back to the panel and see how much we can answer.
Absolutely. Well, I think that first question about what happens if the member states have recovery plans that aren't sustainable. Sarah, as a member of the opposition in your own country, do you have any thoughts on what can happen there? Is this a focus for debate at the moment at home?
Well, yes, thank you. I think this is a very good question from Oras Tynkkynen, also from Finland, and maybe he would be a very interesting participant to also hear out on this. This is indeed a discussion also here in Finland. We are talking about the national recovery plans, and I think we have a quite mutual understanding on both sides, the government and the opposition, that this needs to be done in a sustainable way. This is something that Finland really wants to show example and lead the way, and we hope that the EU Commission will have the tools to intervene if all member states do not do their share. This is something that we need to do together, and everyone has to do their part.
Thank you. Any thoughts on that question? Francesco, do you think the member state plans will be aligned with European priorities?
It's not a question that really is belong to me. What we are trying to do as Arena is to provide to our membership, that are all the EU member states except Austria, that is anyway joining shortly, all the possibility to make the right mix for the economy. And this, I think, is also responding to the second question that you had concerning the costs and the technologies. We are lucky in the sense that nowadays the technologies that cost less are the renewables. So the market is going already in the right direction, and we have just to accelerate the path. Concerning green hydrogen, is sure that is more expensive than traditional renewables, but I don't know if we can say that it's just a niche, talking about long shipping, about EV industry. So it's an issue that is an important one, because of where we cannot electrify. And so decarbonize the activity, is there the hydrogen can have this added value. And if in the stimulus package we provide support for the industry of electrolyzer, possibly it may come more competitive in shorter than we think.
Thank you. Kathleen, do you have any thoughts on that question about the European actions and then the national plans? Will they align, do you feel?
Well, I think they should align. And what I mentioned in my previous answer, I think in this crucial moment, it's very important that we take care of our public money and we do not invest it into projects that are contrary to our long-term goals. And just as we speak, the Hungarian Minister of Agriculture just announced that he would be unhappy to apply the climate conditionality in the agriculture program starting 2022. So there will be a lot of countries who will try to back down from their ambitions So, and of course, it's understandable to some extent. There should be a dialogue. The Commission should help these countries, but when we design our programs, when we design the financing of these recovery plans, we have to have strong conditionalities, and not only long-term, but also mid-term conditionalities, monitoring processes, because if somebody really goes to the wrong direction, we shouldn't pay it from European taxpayers' money. We should finance the sustainable and green and social transition, and not something that brings us back to a time that is worse than before.
Thank you. Interesting thoughts there. And maybe, Christina, that third question about the construction sector, how can we empower the construction sector to embrace digital transformation and secure the skills to deliver energy efficient buildings? Is that happening, do you think? And can that accelerate?
I was prepared to reply to the previous question, but I will take this one as well.
If you want to touch on both quite briefly, you'd be welcome to.
Okay, so on the construction, I think it's also about how you, as government, can give to the private sector the stimulus to invest in this. Because if you only go and ask them to comply with these new standards and with these new rules, some of them will not be able to do it, and they will go bankrupt or they will go out of the market. So I think there should be a dialogue, and not think that, of course, we have this CO2 targets, and this is good, it's at European level, but we need to look at the people that are paying taxes and are producing something for our national economies, how they can cope with this new requests. And this is why I'm saying that maybe we should look at the different stimulus and maybe reduce some taxes for these companies in the construction sector to be able to cope with this. On the other hand, if I can touch briefly the other subject, I think there should be an alignment between the national interests and the European interests, and the dialogue between member states and European institutions, because I've lived in Brussels, and I know that sometimes what the people working in Brussels see from there is not really the reality in the member states. And I think there should be a real dialogue, and not only an intervention, but also mechanisms to help member states reach this CO2 targets. And I was giving you the example of Romania, where we have a very diversified energy mix, and we should really see how we can maybe maintain it, because also, as you know, we risk to be dependent on Russian gas if we let's say close everything and not make this transition properly.
Thank you very much for that. Niels, that middle question over finding the optimum between energy investment costs and sustainability benefits. How can we find the most efficient solutions in all of this?
Is that for me, Kieran?
Yeah, Niels, if you want to touch on that question.
Okay, so I think the European Union is not necessarily always an expert on this question, simply because the member states knows what is best. How they have sometimes a deeper knowledge of which direction to take in order to increase sustainable development and renewable energy. For example, we have a lot of wind in Denmark, and we have a lot of water to place the wind turbines. But in other countries, let's say Spain, my friend Nico talked earlier, they have more sun than we do, and perhaps it would be more efficient in Spain to have more sun panels than in Denmark. So I think the role of the European Union is basically to set out the targets, to say, okay, we need X% of renewable energy in 2030. And I think that target, by the way, is too low right now. We need to raise it to at least 40%. But we need the European Union to set the target, and then the member states should basically find the solutions of how to get there. The European Union should not always legislate in detail, but set the overall targets. And then we have to find ways then to hold the member states accountable. That's the first question again. And I think, just very briefly on this recovery package, we should have climate conditionality. I think, you have to live up to the legislation on renewable energy and climate in order to access this money. That would be an idea from my side.
Thank you so much for that, Niels. Maria Graça, what would your thoughts be on the empowerment of the construction sector to embrace digital transformation and secure the skills to deliver energy efficient buildings? Do we need more education and training? Where do you think we need to go on this issue?
Thank you very much. Before just me a comment to Francisco, when I refer niche to hydrogen, I was not exactly on the size, was more that the hydrogen is not the solution for everything. Like you have said, it's for the heavy industry, some of the modes of transport, and also islands and some storage. But we cannot embark in the idea that is a solution for everything. It's where it is appropriated. So I think we agree on the same line. Now, the construction. There is not only the digitalization and all the ICT technologies are very important for the construction, but also new materials. There is a lot of evolution on materials related with thermal properties, with other properties that can be used also in the use of the technology, glasses. So there is a lot of evolution that the buildings need to be incorporated in the buildings, and also the planning. We should embrace more and more the architects in also this energy efficiency and renewables question, and also the city planners. So this needs to be done in a holistic way, because a lot of energy can be saved if you plan well your community, your city. We need a lot of capacity building, both on the engineers, the architects, the workers in general in the construction. And I'm very happy that the renovation wave is one of the top priorities, because it's probably the sector that in my sustainability criteria is top, because it's the one that will give more results in terms of energy savings, and also more employment, and use local materials, and dynamize the local economy. So cost benefit is probably the top one, but for that to be successful, we need capacity building, and we need to remove a lot of barriers, administrative barriers, complexities, because who owns what in the buildings. So there is a lot of work. Many countries and regions have trying to get these solutions. Is not easy, so we all need to push forward, regions, countries, and the Commission, and the Covenant of Mayors involved, so this will be successful, because is a top priority, and I fully agree with that.
Thank you, Maria. You covered a lot in that answer, but I think everything you touched on is so important to the journey that we're on. So I might move on to our final thoughts, our final perspectives on this. And really at this stage, I'd just like to get a final round of comments from the panel on the key priorities for a green recovery. So if you can put into 60 seconds what you feel is needed as the top priority. And Nicolas, I might start off with you. Nicolas Gonzalez Cazares, do you want to give us your thoughts in 1 minute on the key priorities for a green recovery?
I will try. I will try. If we want the recovery plan to be a plan with future, it can only be green. This is absolutely the idea. The ecological transition and digitalization is the best recovery strategy, modernizing and reloading our economy, avoiding temptations to bet on easy solutions and update models. Turning towards an energy system in which the supply is based on renewable energy will also benefit energy security and independence. Today, energy imports into the European Union represent 55%. This will make us reflect on the vulnerability that we have. When we compare it with what was happening with the COVID-19 crisis. With the COVID-19 crisis, the debate has opened on how to carry out the recovery plan. Acting against the pandemic caused by COVID-19 comes first, but we cannot forget the fight against climate change. Now we are debating the climate law draft, but I think that we only have 1 minute, but I will resume in this phrase.
And you've gone over that.
Oh.
So, okay. Sorry to cut you off there. My apologies. I have to move on to Kathleen. Your thoughts on the key priorities for a green recovery.
Thank you. I think a very important message for all of us politicians is that the energy transition and the fight against climate change will not be a success story if it lacks backing from society, if it's unpopular. And that's why we have to make the transition a just transition. We need to have indeed proper dialogue with every stakeholder, but we also have to be clear about our priorities. That's why I think, just as my colleague Cazares said, the transition can only be green and future-proof and people-centered. And just to list some of my favorite ideas and most promising thoughts for me is the renovation wave, which will provide jobs, which will provide societal benefits, but also climate benefits. Cleaning of the transport and the logistics, the installation of charging points for electric vehicles, boost for rail travel, clean mobility, things that we experience in our daily lives. I think these have to be the centers of our communication about the recovery package, because everybody knows these. And through these examples, we can get the popular support we need so much for our cause to fight climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So over to Christina Pruna. Christina, what are your priorities for a green recovery in 60 seconds?
So first of all, I think one big priority is to stimulate private investments and take into account the criteria of economic efficiency. I think the private sector should be a partner in this way to reducing our carbon emissions. Then I would say we need to center all these European subsidies in areas that will really make the transition just, and also that will give this perspective of CO2 emissions. And here, of course, I will not repeat, but I think about the infrastructure for electric cars and the renovation of buildings and so on and so forth. And last but not least, I think we really need to pay attention where we are putting the European money, the European subsidies, because we do not want to create sectors that are not self-sustainable in the future. This is the problem with the fossil fuels right now, and that's why we don't subsidize them, also because of the CO2 emissions, but also because they are not self-sustainable. And we do not want to create economic hazards in the future by not by investing in some industries or some sectors that are not self-sustainable. So we need to really pay attention where we put our money.
Thank you. I'll move on to Francesco La Camera. What should be the top priority in 60 seconds?
I'd say that I agree with almost all things that I've been saying this last run. If I can say, I trying to put also the eye of the global, the globality. So solidarity, priority. Cooperation, my point of view, is a priority. Taking into consideration a different point of view and a different domestic situation. In this point, in this respect, tomorrow in this paper, we also list a set of criteria can be helpful to consider different way in different circumstances to go to the same objective. The last thing is not just a technological choice going for renewable and a cleaner world. It's a socio-economic choice. Is that we have to have the courage to have a vision and working currently.
Thank you. So, Maria da Graça, what are your concluding thoughts on this?
I would say three priorities. More research so that we can have clean technologies. Second, we need to have simple target public policies and also public funding instruments. And third, the behavioral changes. So we need to have some sort of change in our individual behavior, but also in the social society behavior as a whole. So if we do this, if we manage to have these three things, we will have a successful fight against climate change and we will achieve the Green Deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria Graça. Sarah Sofia Siren, your thoughts?
Thank you very much. There's something similar with crises like the pandemic, the COVID-19, the economic crisis, and the climate crisis. And that is that these crises, they don't care about borders. There are crises that we share and we need to cooperate to tackle them. And therefore, I really think that we should increase the ambition of the EU climate targets. We still need to strengthen the cornerstone of our climate combat, which is the EU ETS, the emission trading system. In terms of funding the recovery work, my main point would be that we really make sure that we don't spend €1 on unsustainable forms of energy production. We need to invest in new forms of energy production, sustainable forms. We need research and innovations. I'm sure we can do this because this is also a possibility for us to do things in a smarter way. That's the magic in the crisis. We need to do things in a new way, but it's a possibility for us to be more sustainable.
Thanks, Sarah Sophia. And finally, Niels, I'll give you the last word on key priorities for a green recovery.
Okay, thank you, Kieran. Lots of good words here. I have 3 points. I think we need to do more. We need to do it justly, and we need to do it together. So we need to do more in the sense that even though the Commission and the European Union has taken a great step with the European Green Deal, we still do not live up to the Paris Agreement. That's why we need to raise the ambition level, and we can do that in the European Parliament if the will is there. I hope we can find a majority for that to raise the targets. Second, we need to do it in a just way. We can only do this if people accept it and they think it's socially just. And that's why the European Union needs to use its budget on, for example, a just transition fund to make sure that some of the wealthier parts of the European Union, they also contribute to the transition in some of the less wealthy parts. That's extremely important, so it's just. And the third and final point, we need to do it together. When it comes to the rules and the legislation in the European Union, we need to make sure that everybody follows it. And that's why I think that we should have a climate conditionality in the new recovery fund. We need to make sure that everybody follows the rules, because that's the way you get a fair transition where everybody is treated fairly. So that would be my 3 points. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Niels, for that. So we're coming to the end of the session. And, you know, I think it's been really interesting. And it was great to have Commissioner Simpson with us. There was no shortage of ambition in what she said. It has to be fast and deep. It will be labour intensive. But she talked about a 20-fold increase in offshore wind. She talked about the integration of systems. And she talked about the potential for jobs, for the recovery to be very centred and focused on the green wave. So I think there's a huge amount of food for thought in that. So I want to thank Commissioner Simpson, thank my colleagues, both within the European Parliament, but also in the member states around Europe. And I think your observations and insights were hugely useful. And can I also thank the audience who had so many questions coming in. I can see the word cloud taking place there. And I might, just before I pass over to Jan, I might just quote from Rahm Emanuel, and I'm sure we're well used to hearing this former advisor to Barack Obama, this quotation, where he said, "You can never let a serious crisis go to waste." And what I mean by that is it's an opportunity to do things you think you could not do before. So on that note, I will pass back to Jan to do the final part of our session. Thank you.
So thanks a lot, Kieran. Before I close the session, I would like to open now the floor again to the participants. We started a word cloud, and you've seen underneath the stream that there's already the question, what should be the top priority for the European Union to make a green recovery happen? So the word cloud idea is you write one precise word in there, you send it to the cloud, and those words which have been mentioned most become bigger. So in the end, we will see a mix of topics, and I see already quite a lot coming up, and I think you should see that soon as well. Let's wait probably 20 seconds that you all enter a priority that you think is the most important to make a recovery green. It's a complex question, and you would see the word cloud is already also very complex. It shows the variety of approaches. So I would say that we close that in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 seconds. And I hope the control center puts it up to you so that you all see it online. Okay. So let me check the online stream. Can we see the word cloud? So I hope it's now visible to everyone. Yes, it's visible to everyone. And I would see, okay, the biggest ones are global, which means, okay, we need a global approach, obviously. Sustainability in the definition to unite economics, ecologic aspects, and social aspects into a win-win-win situation. Cooperation to work together, not only in the EU, but globally for sure. Unity, innovation, technology side, and so on. But you see there's lots of topics coming up, and exactly that shows how complex the thing is, how complex the question is in Brussels right now, how to bring the Green Deal together with recovery plans, how to spend the billions into the right future technologies, how to keep people on board, to bring people on board, to leave no one behind. And I think that's the big question. We will take these incentives with us, and also the long questions, all the long list of questions that you raised as participants. And of course, that will be part of the discussions in the coming weeks. I would also tell you that this is not the only place where EUFORES is discussing such events. We do a long trail of trips, usually to the national parliaments, but because of COVID-19, we do exactly these formats much, much more with the national parliaments. We go to all the national levels to discuss exactly these questions. And for those interested, we have the next one with the French Parliament on Thursday morning, where we will continue to discuss with the national level where things are and where things could go. I would like to thank again, of course, the speakers, the Commissioner Francesco La Camera, and for being with us to invest the time and to bring the debate further on. But what I would also like to say now to European Commission and all the people behind this Sustainable Energy Week, it's an amazing job that you, within a few weeks, going from the physical sustainable energy week now to this highly professional one. And I can only tell you there's great people behind the scenes making sure that everything works well. Those in the control center everywhere. It's very smooth and perfectly done so that we could continue these debates. Now, thanks a lot, everyone. I wish you a great afternoon, continuing debates and some more great events during this week. And I hope to see you soon. And let's close with the one big mission that we all have. We have to solve the climate emergency within the next 10 years. Let's do it. There are great people on board, cross-party, and it's probably the best and most rewarding challenge that we ever had. So thanks a lot. See you soon again. Bye-bye. And for the participants, there will be now a feedback form popping up so that we also learn if we did a good job and what should be improved in the future. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot and good to have you all on board.